Welcome to the ninth grade experience. I'm your host, Chris Dutchko. As a teacher of freshmen and one of our freshman mentor committee faculty advisors, I spend a lot of my school day thinking about and helping students with the successful transition from middle school to the halls of Emmaus High School. The goal of this podcast is to give you the story of the ninth grade here at Emmaus High School through the people who live it daily, the students and staff. We will attempt to touch on the real issues and stories that ninth grade students face, ranging from academics to athletics, technical school, and just trying to find your way as one person in a community of approximately 2,700 students. We will also look to speak with some of the influential staff members who play a key part in a student's ninth grade year. It is the hope that future ninth grade students and their families can use the tips and insights provided here to begin making connections to their potential new school and learn more about the day-to-day lives of the students that they will one day become and realize from day one that ninth grade counts. You can learn more about this episode and all of the episodes of the ninth grade experience by following us on Twitter at EHSFMC or at Chris Stutchko, or following the hashtag EHS9counts, or our website, sites.google.com/eastpennsd.org/ninth grade experience. Before we jump into today's topic, let's thank our sponsor for this show, the East Penn Education Foundation. This podcast has been made possible through a $1,000 grant awarded to teachers like me each year who are attempting to do unique projects in the area of science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. The foundation supports programs that put learning in motion by giving students the tools they need to think actively in a complex and changing world. You can follow them on Facebook at EPSD Education Foundation, on Twitter at EPSD EdFound, or on Instagram at EPSD Ed Foundation. Now on to the show. As a freshman at Emmaus High School, you are at the beginning of a 4-year odyssey that will see you progress in many different ways. As you explore the clubs, activities, athletics, and all the awesome things EHS has to offer, a critical question exists. What does it take to be a successful student in the classroom? In this episode, you will hear from several teachers who have worked with ninth graders for many years that want to help you make that transition to EHS as smooth as possible. This 2-part episode features a roundtable discussion with Kristin Susens, Jake Hildebrand, Heather Spots, Stacey Yapsuga, and Amy Kaunitz, giving their tips and tricks to get an edge in the classroom, followed by a one-on-one interview with Tim O'Connor, who stresses the balance needed to be successful in the classroom and beyond. So sharpen those pencils or charge up those Chromebooks, because it's time to take notes as class is back in session as the teachers of EHS welcome you. All right, welcome everybody. So here we have a special program today. We have a group of ninth grade teachers that are here to give a little bit of advice as you prepare for the upcoming transition from middle school to high school. So we're going to go around and they're going to take some time to introduce themselves, and then we're going to get into it. So Mr. Hildebrand, why don't you start?
Hi everybody, I'm Mr. Hildebrand. I teach math here, predominantly Algebra 1 and Algebra 2.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Yapsuga. I am a special education learning support teacher, and I predominantly teach English.
I'm Mrs. Kaunitz. I teach social studies to freshmen, and it's American Studies 1.
I'm Ms. Susens. I teach GSI, which is a science class, and also biology and environmental science.
Hi, I'm Heather Spots. I teach ninth grade English.
So we have a nice cross-section here of teachers from all different departments that are going to give you some insights into what life is like here at Emmaus High School. So every first question in all of our episodes is describe your ninth grade experience, but since we have some of our staff here today, we're going to have them talk about their own ninth grade experience. They're not going to tell you the year they were ninth graders unless they want to divulge that information, and they're just going to kind of talk to you a little about what they remember from their ninth grade year. So whoever wants to go first, you guys can chime in.
So this is Mrs. Yapsuga. I'm going to talk about what I can recall from ninth grade. Essentially, I transitioned from a Catholic elementary school. I wasn't in a middle school, so the elementary went from K to 8th grade and I then went into a high school setting. So that transition from an elementary to a high school was a huge jump for me. It felt like I was just a minnow in a big pond, even though the size of the school that I went to was so much smaller compared to what Emmaus is. I felt overwhelmed the first couple days of school and that I was going to get lost. And some of my biggest fears was being late for class, going into the wrong room, walking down the wrong hallway, because we had a senior hallway, junior, sophomore, and freshman hallway. And God forbid, freshmen went down the senior hallway. That was a colossal mistake. So I just remember being racked with a lot of fears, but I quickly learned who I can trust in the building and made a good group of friends that kind of helped guide the way for me.
Anyone else remember back to their 9th grade year?
Hi, this is Mr. Hildebrand. I vividly remember my high school experience from my freshman year. I actually am a graduate of VHS, so I went from Lincoln to LMS to Emmaus, and I remember feeling a little anxious about it going into such a big school. However, I think it really helped having an older sibling in the school. I had a brother who was a senior when I was a freshman, so I knew that if there was any kind of issues I would have with getting lost or anything that could come up your freshman year, I had an experienced family member who was there to help me out. Also, playing sports growing up, I knew a lot of the, coming from LMS, I knew, I had a decent amount of friends at LMS, but I also knew some of the IR kids from playing sports, and I think that really helped when I came to Emmaus. You think of it as this very big school, but at the end of the day, most of your classes are going to be with other freshmen, and if you think about from a mathematical standpoint, that half of your freshman classes should be LMS kids and half of your freshman classes should be IR kids. So if you think about, being this small fish in a big pond, you're really not. You're still taking classes with half of the amount of kids, that the faces you recognize, the friends you have from your elementary, middle school experiences, from sports. So I think that part really put my mind at ease that I had a core group of friends going into it. I had the older sibling, and I think that made the transition much more smoothly.
Well, and just to kind of piggyback off of that, this is Susens, the elder statesperson in this room, probably, I think.
I don't know. I think we're close.
Okay.
We won't say what year we started high school, but we're close.
A million years ago.
1990.
I distinctly remember all of the, navigations you had to learn. It was like navigating the actual school, navigating your social interactions, navigating time management. I was an athlete, so figuring out what I had to do to get the grades that I wanted and to get where I wanted to go was a major step forward. And I think that's one of the biggest growing things about your freshman year. You're figuring out so many different things. And that's pretty much what I remember, because high school was pretty much a million years ago for me. We didn't even have cell phones then, which is crazy.
I know. I didn't have my first cell phone until I went away to college, which was obviously after my freshman year. So, and we'll talk a little bit about that transition for what that would look like. Anyone else want to chime in on what their 9th grade was like?
I think I feared lunch, if I remember correctly, as a 9th grader. This is Mrs. Spots, and it all worked out. So if you feel like you're going to go into this really big school and you have to fight for a table at the cafeteria, it will all work out. It'll be okay.
And Mrs. Kaunitz, you want to add anything else?
Sure. Yeah, I remember being very nervous about going into freshman year in this big high school, and there were lots of kids who were nice and nervous as well. So everyone just kind of worked together, and it was a great experience in high school.
So we heard a lot about your individual stories, but what do you think that compares to the life of a 9th grader today? We talked about none of us having a cell phone when we started 9th grade. I don't think so. Mr. Hildebrand raised his hand. But other than Mr. Hildebrand, I don't think any of us had cell phones when we started. I was sitting in a flex block today and listened to kids defriend themselves and block themselves on Snapchat, which we never had to really deal with. So what do you think the experience of a ninth grader when we were in ninth grade versus ninth grade today, what do you think that would be like?
It's Mrs. Kaunitz again. I think some of the experience is very similar. You guys are coming into ninth grade, you're nervous, you're excited. Your teachers are feeling the same way. We're excited to meet you, and we're trying to make a good community at Emmaus High School for you. So it's important when you come in to make friends, to be nice to people, and get involved. You're going to get out of high school whatever you put into it, regardless if it's 2020 or 19 coming in, or if it's back in 19-something when the rest of us were in high school.
74.
And I think a lot of ninth graders today have advantages with the technology. Resources are readily available, being able to look up your schedule, look up your grades, get in contact with teachers through email. Those resources weren't as readily available, I think, when a lot of us were entering ninth grade.
On that note, when I went into ninth grade, I wasn't familiar with the layout of the school. I didn't know anybody there. There are so many resources here to kind of help ninth graders, transition. They have opportunity in the summer where students can come in and tour their schedule. You should definitely do that. They have opportunities where, you can possibly talk to older students that were, just in ninth grade experience and learn from, their trials and tribulations. There's so many different opportunities here for you guys.
Okay, so we're kind of running up here on a little bit of a time crunch. So we're going to end with a couple of quick questions. And one thing that we always talk about here at the high school is what makes a good high school student. So any opinions from around the table as these students are listening here over the summer or maybe early in next school year or even today, what should they be focusing on, or what makes a good high school student? And some of you guys have already talked about some of those things, but just kind of putting it out there so people can hear.
So over the course, I don't know when you're listening to this, but over the course of the summer going into your freshman year, the first week of school, your freshman year, second week of school, you're going to hear so many different people tell you all these little bits of wisdom that are going to help you out your freshman year. You'll hear things like go to the learning lab when you need help. You'll hear things like make sure you ask for help if you're struggling with something. But the point I wanted to get across here, my advice for Mr. Hildebrand is get to know your teachers. Okay, your teachers are there. They are your biggest advocate. Some of you might not think that because you may have had some poor experiences with teachers before, but the teachers are here for you. We're not here for ourselves. We're here to help you out with whatever you need in the learning process, in the personal process, whatever's going on. We're here to help you. So if you take the time and get to know your teachers, just like we're going to take the time to get to know you, you'll have that much of a better relationship with us, and you'll have a great experience. It's the teachers where you distance yourself from them, and hopefully they don't distance themselves from you. That's where you feel maybe a little isolated in a class. So if you put yourself out there, the teachers will put themselves out there, and you can meet in the middle, and I think that'll make a great experience, whether you love the subject, hate the subject, love the teacher, hate the teacher, love your friends in the class, you don't have any friends in the class, your teachers are going to be your biggest advocate.
I think that there's a big myth regarding teachers at the high school. I've heard a lot of freshman students come up and say, oh, I heard in middle school that the teachers are out to get you, or they want to see you fail, where I have to say that the faculty here at Emmaus, the teachers here, really do care about the students and want to see them succeed. But on that note, students also need to have good work ethic. There are so many tools that are available for students to be successful. Google Classroom, Remind 101, there's Flux Homeroom, different opportunities to meet with the teacher. And if students don't work for the grade that they want, then they're really going to struggle in ninth grade.
And I think just to add on to that, being kind, being compassionate is really going to get you a long way.
So I think we'll leave off for part one. So I'd like to thank Mr. Hildebrand, Mrs. Yapsuga, Mrs. Kaunitz, Ms. Susens, and Mrs. Spots. We'll have another mini episode with some of the other ninth grade teachers at the second part of this. So thanks a lot for coming in, everybody. And now on to part two with Mr. O'Connor. Okay, so we're here for our second part of today's conversation with some of the teachers here at the high school. I'm here with Mr. O'Connor, who is in his first year here at Emmaus High School? Second year.
Completing second.
Completing a second year. He came up from Eyre Middle School.
Yes.
And he is also our varsity boys and girls swimming coach. So thanks, Mr. O'Connor, for joining us today.
I appreciate it.
So we start off all our conversations the same way. So we like to ask about about people's ninth grade experience. So as I always tell our staff, you don't have to mention which year you were a ninth grader, but if you can just talk a little bit about your ninth grade experience to give the people out there a little bit of a understanding of what you went through.
My freshman year experience in high school was very different from me. My mom worked in my school district where I attended, and she went to school with me every day from K through 8. So ninth grade, the one memory I have is the freedom and flexibility. But with that freedom and flexibility came a lot of learning experiences for me. Learning how to be an independent learner, learning that I was responsible for everything that went down in my day. I think growing up, my parents were always kind of keeping an interest in what I was doing, but then once you get to high school, there is that flexibility, that independence, and for me, kind of looking around the classroom and maybe struggling in the beginning was a challenge for me. It was a lot of fun, but it was difficult to learn how to balance the flexibility and freedoms of high school life. I had a successful time. I repeated a course, math. I was not successful in math. I had a C average in algebra my 8th grade year, and my father said the 25% that you didn't know is going to be 75% of algebra 2, so you should repeat the course. And I remember taking the course, and Mr. Roberts was his name. He was a great teacher, and he would call on me daily, and finally realized one day that I had no clue how to do algebra. And I was in a course with sophomores and juniors, and finally near the end of the first marking period, I was not doing well, and I just said, I really have nothing to lose, so I started participating in class. And the greatest lesson I learned was after I left class that first time after participating, I had 2 junior boys grab me and said, thank God you asked those questions because we have no clue what's going on either. And at that point, I really kind of started growing as a student, realizing that teachers, their job is to teach and instruct, but if I'm not going to be an advocate for myself, I'm going to fail again. And I hated that feeling of repeating a course. So that I really blossomed at that point. Not to say I didn't have struggles over my next 4 years, but my freshman year was so much fun just with the flexibility. But then there are teachers who will give you enough rope to hang yourself, and I was close to doing that. So I was fortunate enough to be on a team where coaches were active and involved and made sure that you didn't fall through the cracks, and I think that helped a lot too.
And you said that it took you about a quarter of the way through your freshman year to kind of realize and make those changes. Was there something specific that you started doing? And you said you started participating more, but was there a strategy or skill that maybe you kind of figured out for yourself that you used?
I think the number one thing for me was realizing that there's places in my school where people are in place to help me, as long as you're willing to seek those people out. Where in middle school, people told me, you need to go here, you need to go here, you need to go here. And at the high school level, everybody loves freedom and you think nobody's looking out for me. I just had to realize through that experience that my teachers really want to help me. They want to help me succeed, but I need to take ownership. And so during study halls, which are random, you can find help, tutoring systems, etc. And so those were a couple of things that I did. I became more organized. I made sure that I truly used one notebook for each class. I stopped I think this is on page 30, my math homework, and then on page 35 in that same notebook is world history. And I really then just realized if I'm organized, that's half the battle. And I'd say that's the greatest strategy I learned, was advocating and being organized.
And I'm sure you see that today in your students too, where you have them in the notebook and it's not a 5-subject notebook, but it's one subject with all the different subjects in it. So you talk about that experience, and how has it kind of shaped the way that you approach teaching ninth graders? You've had to go through that struggle, and we talk about, as a coach, you talk about the athlete that struggles makes the best coach sometimes. So what about your ninth grade kind of transition there are you applying to teaching ninth graders now?
I think the greatest difference is obviously what the technology brings to the classroom. So, and these kids are more savvy than I ever will be on computers, but I really try to give them a variety of avenues to seek help. Because I understand some kids are nervous and shy and they don't have the courage to necessarily ask in class. And so I say, hey, here's a Google Classroom set up for specifically X, Y, and Z if you ever need help, or email me any concerns you have. So I really all I continue to try to do is show these kids options on how they could advocate and communicate. Because when we went to school, there was only one option, and that was face-to-face.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's even more intimidating. So I really try to tell the students to, A, be organized, B, if you could, or if you need a place to meet, I have free time during these periods throughout the day, and if you want a pass from a study hall, you can get one. So I just try to be as big a communicator as possible, because Mr. Roberts, as I said, he was a great communicator to me. To kind of, he didn't slap me on the head, but kind of woke me up and said, "Hey, these are options, and this is your future, and you need to own it. Otherwise, you go down alone." And that's all I try to do with my students, is to let them know, here's all of this out there for you. And if you are just willing to just try a little bit, there's no reason you can't be successful.
Aside from that technology piece that you talked about, what can you identify something that's vastly different between your ninth grade experience and teaching ninth graders today?
Yeah, I would say that today there's so much more on the teaching side as well as the learning side that's collaborative between students and teachers. And I would also say that I see that a lot in the freshman academy. I think when I went to school at my freshman year, there was much more lecture and less project-based learning, less journaling. There was so much more was formal, and there's so many more ways that we're taught as teachers to assess students in both formal and informal ways, besides just the research paper or a test. It's a lot more application today, a lot more, many more variety of ways to assess students' learnings on things that I never had as a student. We did projects and posters, but we were also limited in that sort of stuff because technology was so limited back then as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, we talk all the time about how to incorporate technology, but then sometimes we forget about using those, like, we'll call them old school techniques about you know talking with students or conferencing with students. So it's kind of a unique balance that we're always trying to pull off here between the new and the old, and incorporating all those different strategies together. So if you were to give some advice or tips for an incoming ninth grade student, when you have somebody come in the door next August, what would you kind of tell them to be on the lookout for? What should they be attempting to do from the early jump?
I think right from the early jump, going back to what I said I learned was, number one, be organized. I think so many kids get caught up in coming to this awesome experience of ninth grade, and they're used to all of this flexibility and freedom, and yet fail to understand that, if you don't turn something in, being silent doesn't help you. Teachers are there to help you, and sometimes kids realize they're in a deeper hole than they think they're in, and it's almost like too late. That's my biggest caution I always tell students is jump on it right from the gun. Be organized, be communicative, get involved in the school in some way, shape, or form, whether it's a club or an activity or sport, whatever. I find that students who are involved in some way in school are much happier and much more successful. And there's a variety of ways you can get involved in our school, from both student-run clubs to teacher-run clubs, student activities. There's help through tutoring and all these different things. And if you feel yourself slipping on the freedom area where you just love the flexibility and you need help, the biggest asset I think our building has that I learned about last year was the Learning Lab. That there's always teachers around willing to help you. It might not be your specific teacher, but there are teachers there willing to help you. That, for me, would have been a great help as a freshman. And I've sent students there this year who just said it was excellent. And I think there's a lot of ways that students can get assistance in any way they need in our high school as opposed to when we went to school.
And that learning lab we'll talk about a little bit for now. Just that's something that you'll hear about probably during your freshman orientation, and it's a room in the school where there are teachers from all the different core subject areas, math, science, social studies, and English, that are in there for most of the day. And like Mr. O'Connor said, you don't necessarily have to be a student in one of those classes to access that, but they offer supports all day through the day so that you always have access to a teacher. And that's something that you should look for in the beginning of next year when they post a list on which teachers are going to be and where that's going to be located in the building, because like every year at Emmaus High School, there are changes all over the place, so we can't tell you where to look for it right now, but you should be on the lookout for it, and you'll hear about it during the orientation. But you talked about getting involved, and obviously you're super involved with the swimming program here at Emmaus High School. If you are not aware, championship swimming program, lots of great swimmers come through there, lots of dedicated athletes. So when you see a ninth grader come out for your team, what is it that you're looking for? What makes a successful ninth grade athlete in your program? And it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody that's, earning pool records or district titles, but what makes a successful freshman athlete in the swimming program?
I think somebody who's disciplined is the first step, and discipline is a word thrown around by a lot of people and is interpreted a lot of different ways. But for me, I look at discipline as one: are you able to schedule your day out where you can be to practice on time? Some people lack that discipline in their lives to be able to say no at certain times to friends or other peers who want to do some things, and being committed and having the discipline to see yourself grow as an athlete, a student athlete in our building, is the first thing I see. I also look at the discipline in regards to having balance with your grades. As you know, being a coach, we get updates on a weekly basis as to how students are doing in our classes. And I don't wait for kids to be failing. I'm on them early on. So do they have the discipline to get their grades in order, balance their academic workload with their athletic workload is another big thing. Discipline also with high school, you're invited to a lot more things. There's a lot more opportunities, but do you have the discipline to still maintain proper sleep patterns? That's something we talk about all the time. Yep. Your rest, your sleep is so important. And kids think as they get older, I've earned the right to stay up later. And while that is true, it might be true in your household, it also, you need your rest at this age, because when you start class at 7:23 the next day, that's tough, especially if it's a core class. So, do you have that discipline to stay focused on what you do? And then also, I always talk about the kids, do you have the discipline to fuel your body properly? Are you drinking water? And we've installed some great water fountains at the school this year for athletes. I see them walking around with their big water bottles to fill up, to fuel your body properly. Everybody loves the cafeteria at the high school, all the new stuff, but are you going after the new junk stuff that you have that you don't have at middle school, or are you actually making better choices where they have salad bar stuff and different things like that? And so I look for my student athletes to be disciplined.
And it's interesting, we had a prior episode with some varsity athletes as freshmen, and they mentioned a lot of the same things. And even in your answer right there wasn't a whole lot of mention of the skill of swimming or the skill of diving. It was the skill of being a well-rounded student, the skill of time management, the skill of even nutrition and hydration, things that maybe in the 8th grade, it's not necessarily things that they talk to you a whole lot about. Mm-hmm. But when you get here to the high school, you do have all those different opportunities. I know one of our some of our athletes that were on that episode talked about, sometimes you have to say no to the late night movie or the late night party. And just for everyone listening, the swimming practice in the morning starts at what time?
5:30 a.m. in the water.
So 5:30 in the water. So if you're staying up late at night, you're not going to be out there ripping through the water at 5:30 a.m. So they have an added incentive to make sure they're getting the proper sleep and hydration as well too. So talking all about those different things, and you see that in the classroom, you see it in the pool as well. So a lot of different things about discipline and making sure you're getting your help and all the things that you need. So in your mind, what does it mean to be a good ninth grade student?
I think to be a good ninth grade student, you're really, I can say this, meeting all these ninth grade teachers in the ninth grade academy here, I think, has been fantastic. And they all put so much effort into leading the students down the right path and giving them tons of options, tons of ways to communicate. And so to come in and say, I missed yesterday, what did I miss? Every teacher has a web page, a Google Classroom, whatever. It's impressive, and I've noticed it this year more than last year, the number of students who have emailed proactively, I'm missing school these next 2 days because of whatever, or they don't even need a reason. Can you tell me what I'm going to miss? Or I've missed the last 2 days, but I've accessed your Google Classroom, and I did that worksheet that was uploaded. I think those students who are proactive are the ones who really, really have blossomed quicker throughout the year. And we all get there at different times. But those students who get there and realize, wow, all these things are in place. The teachers don't put them in place for themselves. They put them in place so students have 3-4 other places to look for before they even get to the teacher. And as a teacher, boy, we really love those go-getters who get all over that sort of stuff. So that's the first thing I see. The second thing I always see with a good student is somebody who is conscientious of where they are in the building. They come to class prepared because it is a big building. It's the number one fear freshmen have coming here is, I'm in the black box during this period, and I have to get all the way over to this side of the building on this period. It takes me a little bit longer. Communicate with your teacher. Let them know that. They're going to be very, very understanding. But on the flip side of that, the students whose goal is where they kind of map out their day and they say, I could hit my locker here and here, and I'll be prepared. So I'd say the students who actively look at all the resources around them are the ones who are going to be more successful. Now, some students realize it halfway through the year. They get that wake-up call halfway through the year and like, whoa, and they change and they buckle down and they really do a good job. Or they're suddenly involved with the sport and they realize, wow, now there's 3 or 4 people who are on my case because I've got to pass this and I might be very talented. And boy, that's amazing too when you see student athletes suddenly have 2 or 3 other adults, because we all communicate in the building, especially in the freshman academy. I do go to the science teacher, I do go to the math teacher, I do go to the social studies teacher, and we do talk about what can we do to help this student be better.
So you've now been here for 2 years. So how long did it take you to get comfortable in the building? Now I know you know the area and the athletic center and the swimming and the pool and all that, but how long did it take you to get comfortable being here at Emmaus High School?
I think, to be honest, it took me a good marking period. Now, I failed to do the one thing a lot of students will do. This summer, they're going to be offered the opportunity for a whole week to walk through the building. And when I see students, especially some of my student athletes, they say they came 3 times that week in August and walked their whole schedule. I'd say I feel very comfortable that after the first month, or at least by the end of the first marking period, not only did I know my way around the whole building, but I knew the quickest way. Yeah. And I think that's the most important thing that the teachers always say is, wait, you have class right before here, and you take this way, let me tell you, a better way. For example, I didn't realize for the first 4 or 5 weeks that I should just be cutting through the courtyard to get to other areas of the building much quicker.
Especially while it's warm out still. And then when it gets to winter, then you got to figure out a way to do it while not going outside. So one of those things that you kind of have to learn maybe twice during the course of the year there to kind of get those perspectives on the building.
Correct.
So we're going to wind down a little bit here. For our last question, is there anything, we've covered a lot of different areas, but is there one thing that maybe we didn't talk about that might make the difference for a student in their freshman year?
I would say that students have access to just so much more here. And along with that, when it comes to study halls, take advantage of your study hall time. I don't see enough kids from time to time who struggle academically and don't take advantage of that time. Study halls are exactly that. They're meant for you to study, and it'd be great if kids utilize that time, like I mentioned earlier, going to the learning lab and different places like that. So I'd say that's the number one thing if I was a student coming here was there are students, especially student athletes, who get all their work done. But between the school days because they utilize their study halls, they access the teachers so that they're going home without any questions in their mind. And instead, when they're home, they don't have the teacher there to ask that question, but instead you see tons of students who zip up and down these hallways during study hall time to meet with the teacher or communicate with the teacher via email while they're in the building to get clarification on assignment and finish it up. And boy, that's awesome.
So lots of great suggestions from Mr. O'Connor. If you may have him for English next year, he's up on the 3rd floor, up in the furthest part away of the building.
Upper north wing.
Yep. So if you were in the black box right before, hopefully Mr. O'Connor will cut you a little slack on your large walk across the hall, but across the building. But thanks, Mr. O'Connor, for taking some time with us and lots of great insights.
Appreciate it.